Today we're going to look at the very sad tale of a bishop who left home and never came back until his death. The game started with d4 and I played d5. My opponent played bishop f4. I played c6. Now the idea of this move is to transfer the queen on b6 after he's played the pawn to e3, queen on b6, pressuring the dark squares and attempting to exploit the fact that the bishop has left home. And that's the theme of this video. Keep an eye on this bishop here. Anyway, after c6, he played e3, queen b6, queen to c1. Now, in a previous video, my opponent in a similar position played b3 and ended up with massive weaknesses on dark squares. There was this pawn eventually went there, this knight eventually went there, this bishop went there, the knight ganged up with the queen on the knight, and there was loss of material. So this is the alternative. This has been played by very strong players. So we go on with the game. Bishop f5, of course, you move your bishop out of the way before you play the e6 move. Makes sense. c4, perfectly playable, and it's been played. There are examples in the database where this is played by players over 2500 rating. Now, this setup has been played by players such as Ivanchuk as black, rated over 2700. So it doesn't worry me that he should decide to push here. Overextending the center in the opening is never a very good idea. Even though it looks very good short term, there could be problems in the long term. What is interesting about this move is it's not found in the database of master and grandmaster games. Not a single example. So that speaks volume about this move. Simply queen d8. I'm sure there are other possibilities such as checking here. But queen d8 is just makes sense. Knight to f3, knight to f6, and he goes on with his queenside attack. Fair enough. Knight here on d7. So basically, black is following the rule that says, look, when your opponent has an idea that you believe is not very sound, even though it looks good in this case, it looks very good. The break on b5 and the pressure on the queen side. When you believe that your opponent is doing something he shouldn't be doing, don't make any move to take him away from that idea. Don't interfere with his thoughts. Just keep developing your pieces, and your time will come. b5, he breaks. Now, usually in those setups, the threat is to take, and then this bishop goes to a6, threatening bishop b7, which in conjunction with this bishop is deadly for the rook. But in his case, it can't happen because after taking, recapturing, and bishop a6, you get a simple check here that picks up the bishop on a6. So black is not concerned about what's going on the queen side and can safely castle. Now we look at the position. All the minor pieces are out, you can see, whereas these two minor pieces have not left the home. And so you can say that although white has got an advantage in space on the queen side, black has an advantage in development. And now he makes a mistake that many players in the lower rating range make, which is to start an argument before you finish to develop your pieces. So my opponent plays knight e5, and this is only helpful to black, because you could say, look, this knight is not particularly well placed here. The natural development of a knight, it's usually here, and the prospect for that knight are basically zero at this stage, because it can't move forward, go anywhere. It's not a good knight. So it's really welcome by black to see that white wants to exchange, and so we go take. Now, if bishop takes, no problem. If bishop takes, probably queen a5 check, asking the question. See what he wants to do. But there are other possibilities. There's also the possibility of taking here, which you wouldn't actually mind giving up this bishop on dark squares, because a lot of your pawn structure is already on dark. And after that, you either have queen takes, which after queen a5 check, the king loses the right to castle, or you have this rook taking, which after check will lose this pawn. I have not yet examined whether it's safe to take this pawn, but it looks all right from here. So anyway, after knight takes e5, he decides to take with the pawn. And I don't know where in the world people get those ideas, but I just, now this is lost. And it's going to be lost without compensation. And this bishop is going to be solidly locked out of the action. And not very good so early in the game. And in fact, the computer engine gives that as the equivalent of being 4 pawns down this position. Speaks volume about how weak the position now has become. Finally, he realizes that he has to develop his pieces, but we just pick up the pawn with threat of winning the exchange. And that makes he's got to make a move to prevent that here on b3, which allows black to make a move that stops him from castling. Bishop d3. Now, of course, if he takes, it's good night, Charlie, with knight takes d3, winning the queen here. So he does the next best thing, which is to play the rook here to attack the bishop, forcing the exchange. Now, by forcing the exchange, he does two things. First, he loses the right to castle. He's going to have to artificially castle, put a rook, say, here or there, and then move his king to f1 and perhaps here to be safe. Of course, one of the things that this move does is potentially bring it exposed to the bishop here on e7. Now, in keeping with my usual philosophy about letting the opponent self-destroy, here I just played that, rook c8. There's no need, the house is not on fire, there's no need to do anything. Just bring some pieces into the action. He finds the knight here a little bit too threatening for his own good, so he decides to exchange it. But Black prefers to justify the move here by simply opening up the file and say, well, what do you want to do now? He decides to relieve the pressure. Rook takes, rook here. So it looks like he's just managed to, solve the pressure he was under on the queen side. But if you look at the game, I mean, this bishop is totally out of action. And that's the theme of today's game. The bishop has left home and will never come back until he dies. Here there are variations that you would consider. The one that's a little bit greedy is taking here, queen takes, and then you win the pawn. Although it's winning, it's just allows the rook to come into the action and pressure the queen side, and I didn't want that. So I just played there. He takes here, I take with check. And now the king is off traveling. So now instead of allowing him to develop a rook as we saw in the previous variation, now it's actually me who puts my rook into play, triggering some exchanges, and this bishop is still missing in action because all the play is going on the queen side. Now there's two pass pawn here, and this bishop is going to be massively missing from the queen side. Rook b1, b5. We just, when you got pawns, push them. Preferably, always push them together. Don't get the idea that you can, push just one pawn and queen. Always move them together. That's critically important. There are variations where it's a forced win if you push just one pawn, but generally speaking, the pawns, when you've got two pass pawns, move them together. e4. So he has to find a little bit of breathing space. Take. Simply that. Now I'll give him the option to bring back his bishop into action, but this is not going to go very far for him because I would simply push, and he's going to be stuck guarding this pawn with the king. Instead he goes there, which is a monumental waste of time, and it enables me to totally put the bishop here out of action, because now the move here is forced, which gives me g5, which does two things: an escape square for my king in case there are problems with the back rank, and it completely now puts the bishop out of action. Now the bishop is not likely to get back here and support some action on the queen side. Then b4, just push the pawn. F, you don't pay attention to what he does on the king side. It's totally irrelevant to this position. He can win the pawn and you just give it to him. The name of the game here is to actually push the pawn on the queen side. Now, showing his inexperience, he defends the pawn, which is a pawn that black didn't care at all about. And this allows another move, which is check here, which is going to do two things. Either he's going to go on this side or there, and he's going to take his king far away from the action, enabling the push of the pawn, or he's going to lose his bishop, and this is what he did. He lost his bishop. King to d2. I know you just take. It's just amazing how some players just lose games just like that. Rook a1 is inviting me to play a move that I need to play anyway. My preferred move is actually forcing me to play it. Don't do that when you're playing a game of chess. Don't force your opponent to make good moves. Now he's still floundering. Check. King f1, and now just that. He's going to lose the house. So this is really a sad tale of how games are typically lost by players. I keep referring to them as in lower rating range, but that's where they are. Hopefully for most of those players, they can learn, for example, from videos like this one. And by learning, they can quickly find their way up the rating range and into the big time.